On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV.
Well, good evening. I'm Piers Morgan, Uncensored. Now, people often tell me there's no such thing as cancel culture. It doesn't exist. It's in my head. But it does exist. It's very real. It involves delusional mobs who shame, abuse and vilify anyone who dares share an opinion that doesn't conform to their own narrow worldview. And here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Macy Gray. You might recall that last week the award-winning singer appeared on this show. And I asked her a very simple question. If I asked you what a woman is, what would you say?
Let's say a human being with boobs. You have to start there.
Yeah, I mean, the dictionary is quite straightforward. It just says a human, adult, female, right?
I will say this, and everybody's going to hate me, but as a woman, just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman.
Right.
Sorry. If you want me to call you a her, I will, because that's what you want. But that doesn't make you a woman just because I call you a her. And just because you got a surgery.
Well, that was very clearly Macy Gray's honestly held opinion. It's what she actually thinks. But I warned her that she would face a backlash, and so she did. In fact, the retribution was as vile as it was predictable. She was bombarded with torrents of vicious abuse online and branded an ignorant bigot and a transphobe. Rolling Stone magazine, to their shame, called her hateful before hysterically claiming her rhetoric could have deadly consequences. Now, remember what Macy Gray's crime was. She just said that a woman is a human being with boobs and a vagina. Yet that apparently will spark deadly consequences. Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, one of the very few public figures who has the nerve to face down this noxious mob, came to her defence and quipped that she would buy Macy Gray's back catalogue. Macy Gray herself initially stood by her right to the opinion she expressed, posting this: all of you threatening and calling me names because I said something you don't agree with, be whatever you want to be and bleep off. Well, good for her. But unfortunately, her resolve didn't last very long. Sadly, the mob rules, and their abuse intensified, and Macy eventually caved. Just one day later, she went on NBC's Today programme in America to issue effectively a grovelling mea culpa.
You were on the Piers Morgan show, and there was a question about trans women.
I think that if you, in your heart, feel that that's what you are, then that's what you are, regardless of what anybody says or thinks. But yeah, I've learned a lot, absolutely, and I'm glad I did.
Have you, Macy? What have you really learned other than the mob rules? That's the way it works these days, isn't it? You pander to the woke brigade, or you be damned forever. And for those people who think this is all trivial culture war stuff, a peculiar obsession of people who spend too much time on Twitter, well, take a look at this post from J.K. Rowling yesterday, when she talked about the impact that it's had on her, this cancel culture. Endless death and rape threats, threats of loss of livelihood, employers targeted, physical harassment, family address posted online with picture of bomb-making manual, aren't mean comments. If you don't yet understand what happens to women who stand up on this issue, back off. That's happened to her. It's happened to many other women who've tried to stand up for women's rights. That's why this is so serious. It's why women are scared to stand up for women. It's why Macy Gray has backed down. They're bullied and abused until they cave. And this is what the so-called inclusive, be kind liberals are like in real life. Here's a clip from a trans pride parade in London on Saturday.
Morgan! Piers Morgan! Piers Morgan! Piers Morgan! Piers Morgan!
Lovely people. Let's be clear. I've always stood up for trans rights, loudly and proudly. I believe trans people are entitled to fairness and equality as much as I am. But still, this poison posse delights in falsely calling me a transphobe. Well, phobia means fear, and I'm definitely not scared of this dumb mob. Anything I'm afraid of is living in a society where awful people like this think they can bully and spew their toxic hate and abuse towards anyone who disagrees with them. What Macy Gray said to me is what she feels. It's her honestly held opinion. What she said to NBC is what happens when a public figure is cowed into submission. And that is a tragedy in any democracy. It's time we stopped bowing to this mob. It's time we took on the mob and stopped them bullying people like Macy Gray. So Macy, let me talk to you about a furore that you were involved in last year, because I found it very interesting the way the debate played out. You wrote an op-ed for Market Watch.
Yes.
A year ago, actually, in which you said that the American flag no longer represents democracy and freedom, and you wanted it changed. Why?
Well, I just think that it's like in a general thing. It's just a new day. It's just time to you reboot the Constitution, the flag, all the old standards that our ancestors lived by. Were right for the time they lived in, but we're in a different time. So the flag is so in the States. To me, what the States do best is diversity, is culture. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Without culture in America, you really don't have much going on. You have, I don't know, Amazon. Like, what do you have if you don't have color in the States, right?
I mean, I agree with that. What I would say to you is, though, that it's such a divisive issue, things like the flag. Do you not think there's a danger? I mean, I'm interested in how you feel a year on from that debate. You got hammered, obviously, by a lot of people. A lot of Americans were outraged. Others thought you raised an interesting point. In a way, it wasn't that dissimilar to what Colin Kaepernick went through with the protests that he was doing. Some agreed with him, others were furious. Do you have any regrets about what you said about the flag?
No, in fact, I'm excited to bring it up again because I think it's more important now. What I want to do is more important now. It's just messaging. It's just like if you. So my idea was to make the stars the colors of all of us. So there'd be a star representing you, one representing me, one representing everybody in the room, right? So that way you look up to the flag and you feel welcome, you feel included, you feel like you belong there.
But let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Which is, I think the American flag is a fantastic flag. I love my flag here too. The English flag, the UK flag, I love these flags. To me, they're not about making any kind of diverse point. They're just great flags. And if I was an American, most Americans I've spoken to about this, they say that there are other ways to celebrate diversity. Juneteenth is one, right?
Right.
There are other ways to do this. Why go after such a powerful emblem of the United States of America when it causes the whole debate actually a lot of disunity?
Well, because you like it because that's the only one you know. Just like whenever the flag was conceptualized, they made it based off what was going on during that time, which was a war. That's another thing. We celebrate a flag that represents war.
I actually have an American flag on my office wall at home. Yeah.
Why?
In fact, I think we've got a picture of it. I think here we are. Look, that's my office wall in London. I look at that every day. It's actually quite a unique one. It's got 34 stars.
Yes.
Which means it was actually the flag from the Civil War period when Lincoln was president. And that's the only flag that was in use during Lincoln's presidency. And I bought it at an auction because America's been a large part of my life. And I find it a stirring emblem. And I never look at it and think, well, that's about white people or white power over black people, or that's attacking diversity, or it could be more diverse. I just think it's such a magnificent emblem. Now, I'm white, so I might think that.
Well, it's not that it's about white people. It's just that everything is different than when Lincoln was president. So, and whoever designed that flag designed it for that day. So I'm just saying, what's wrong with the new flag? What's wrong with representing where we are now? Like we no longer have 34 states, right? So they made one with 50 states. So.
Well, they've changed the flag over the years. That's true. When you got kickback on this, did it surprise you how ferocious some of it was? Did you mind? Did you expect it?
No, I didn't expect it. I thought people would agree with me. I thought people would be like, yeah, let's do a new flag. I don't know. It's kind of an art project. It's just like, well, I don't see why not. That's my thing. I don't get. I understand you want to hold on to tradition and like you went to an auction, so it's probably rare and beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's no reason. We're just not there. We're not back where we were when we had 34 states on no level.
I mean, given the backlash you got, do you wish you hadn't made the stand in the way that you did or not?
No, I really want to bring it up again. I really want to push. Like, if Biden won't do it, I really want to hit up who's ever next.
Do you feel, because around the time you did this, George Floyd was murdered by a police officer. I felt the whole world reacted in the most extraordinary way to that moment, and quite rightly, because the video was horrendous of what happened to him. Do you feel the world has changed for the better in the last year because of that atrocity?
In what way?
Do you feel that more people are aware of racial injustice, of racial equality? Do you feel like the taking the knee, which went around the world like wildfire, especially after George Floyd was killed? Do you feel that that all helps, or are these just token things which don't actually make any tangible difference?
I think it made a lot of people aware. I think when it comes to changing someone's view on race or people, that's more than one event. That's that's growing up, that's parenting, that's where you go to school, that's what neighborhood you live in. There's a lot that goes into how you feel about people that aren't like you. You know what I mean?
Do you feel that America is more or less racist than when you grew up?
It's definitely not as bad, I was born in the 60s, so I don't understand racism, to be honest with you. I get, I'm sitting here with you, and we're different, you know what I mean? And there might be things that I wouldn't want to say in front of you that I might say in front of my friends of color, and vice versa. But to hate someone or want to kill someone or hold somebody down because of what they look like, I don't understand.
I mean, I completely agree. I think most people would completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I do think racism is a minority, fortunately, in almost every country, particularly America and Britain. I don't think it's by any means a popular thing, but it exists. And it's what's the best way to tackle it? What's the best way to get rid of it? How do you make people who are racists rethink the way they are? It's hard.
I think everybody just has to let it go. You have to let go of needing to be better than everyone else. You have to let go of your hang-ups about slavery. You have to let go of your hang-ups about superiority. You have to, it's very personal how you feel about other people. Like we could have a conversation about how you feel about women, and there would be so many things that went into that,
I mean, we're in an era now, Macy, where you can't, most public figures are too terrified to even say what they think a woman is.
I know.
I mean, if I asked you what a woman is, what would you say?
I would say a human being with boobs. You have to start there.
Yeah, I mean, the dictionary is quite straightforward. It just says a human, adult, female, right?
No, a lot of people. Yeah, see, that's a little getting confusing. The whole he, she, they. That's getting a little.
And I'm not sure why, really. It's a bit like this whole issue of transgenders in sport. It's like I support all trans rights to fairness and equality.
Me too.
But not where you have people born to obvious physical superior bodies.
Me too.
Transitioning and then thrashing the women at their sport.
I totally agree. And I will say this, and everybody's going to hate me, but as a woman, just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman.
Right.
Sorry.
You feel that?
I know that for a fact. Like, if you want me to call you a her, I will, because that's what you want. But that doesn't make you a woman just because I call you a her and just because you got a surgery.
Because people do feel that there's biological sex and then there's gender identity, that you can identify as whatever you like
you can call
in terms of a gender, right?
Yeah,
that's
totally.
the freedom we live in.
Absolutely.
But actually you can't change the mechanics of biological sex. They are what they are.
Well, just women go through just a completely unique experience, and surgery or finding yourself doesn't change that. Being a little girl is a whole epic book, and you can't have that just because you want to be a woman.
I mean, that when people like J.K. Rowling have said this, they get attacked, they get abused.
Yeah.
The cancel culture mob comes from me. She gets called transphobic and so on. You might get the same for saying it.
But it's the truth. And I don't think you should be called transphobic just because you don't agree with, there's a lot of, judgment and throwing, stones at people for just saying what it is. You know what I mean?
You have hung out with some very interesting people in your time.
Yeah.
Prince was one of them. You sat in a dark room. He called me up to his room. The lights were out, which was weird. And you talked for 2 hours in this dark room.
Yeah.
And he gave you a great bit of advice. Do you remember it?
Yes, he said, just remember it's not about you.
What did he mean by that?
Well, you know, I didn't know what he meant at first. So, like, maybe last year I finally got it. And he was just saying that as an artist, it's about what you give, how you make your fans feel. It's not about you. Like, if say you like Stevie Wonder, like, you'll sit and listen to his records all day. But do you want to sit with Stevie Wonder all day?
And what's the answer? I would.
You would?
I love Stevie Wonder.
Like, you'd want him to move into your house?
I would love that. I actually used Stevie Wonder to propose marriage to my wife. True story.
Yeah, but do you want Stevie Wonder?
He actually videotaped a proposal on video, which I then played my wife. And she said yes. So I owe Stevie everything.
Okay, so that's a bad example. So yeah,
he can move in. In fact, he ought to move in.
Yeah, totally. Okay, what about what about me? What if I just move into your house?
I think we get on great, actually.
I think so, actually.
Don't you think?
Another bad example. Well, you know what I mean, though.
I know. I think I know what Prince was getting at. I do
Yeah.
know what you mean. You also went out for dinner with Elton John.
Yes.
And the bill came to $3,000.
There's more than that. It's about 3,000 something.
And you had no idea that it was even possible to spend that in a restaurant.
Not at the time, you know, not then. I had never seen a bill that big.
But now you're a superstar.
Yeah, now I
Come
see.
on, you've had a few dinners like this, right?
Yeah.
What's the most you've now spent on a dinner?
On a dinner? Gosh, about that. I you know, maybe 3, 4. Not
Did
too
you
much
ever
more
think
than
when
that.
you were growing up, Macy, one day I'm going to be splashing $4,000 on a dinner?
No, I still think that's ridiculous. But that was what I remembered about dinner with him, and I remember his face when the bill came. It was no big deal. He didn't even look at it.
And is that your face now when you get a bill like that?
No, my face still goes what, and I still look at all the things we ordered. You know, trying to get things taken off.
I read recently that you're looking for love.
Well, you know, that's subjective. That's, you know, that could mean a lot of things.
What did you mean by it?
What did I mean? I don't know. You know, I haven't been in a relationship in a while, and I kind of picture myself, you know, doing all that right now because it's a lot of work, and I don't see it yet. But I'm thinking when I do, I'm just going to have an audition.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just going to, like, have a cattle call, and I get to choose. Did I say that wrong? I have a man call.
A cattle call?
Yeah, and I'll pick the ones, you know.
Well, a lot of bulls turn up. Is that the idea?
Yeah,
Male bulls.
And then I'll interview them. And then
And just to give them a bit of help before they join the queue, and it'll be, I'm sure, a very extensive line, but what advice would you give them about the kind of man you're looking for?
Oh, gosh. See, that's a long... Okay, let me think. Well, you know, not to be corny, but there's energy. You know, there's connection. There's like you look at someone and you know, it's that thing.
Energy.
Yeah, there's energy. You know, you're comfortable with someone.
Tall, small, do you care?
For sure tall. They have to be
Tall?
Yeah. How tall are you?
6'1".
Oh.
Plenty of energy.
You're married. But
She'll probably trade me.
she's probably watching. But no. But yeah, definitely tall. Because I'm tall. I'm 5'11".
How many times have you actually been properly in love in your life, do you think?
Well, I've been married twice, so that's 2 plus maybe 2 more.
4 times.
Tops.
Oprah told me 3 times she'd been.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
To go there, you know.
Well, hard to be also when you're as successful as you are.
Thank you.
And you're famous.
Thank you.
And you're doing all this and you're being Macy Gray. It's hard to then have a human relationship, right? Where you can, I guess, completely trust people.
No, I'm not a big, on trust. I don't really worry about that. It's just a comfort thing for me, you know, who I can sit with and then be myself, at least, you know, most of the time.
When you came out with your criticism of the American flag, you did also, I think, make it clear that you were proud to be an American.
Very. I love my country, probably more than most of the people who criticize me.
Right.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you that.
No, I love my country. I'm proud of my country. I'm proud of where I'm from, of, you know, being a woman, being black. I love everybody. I can honestly say I love everybody.
And if I could have the power to let you relive one moment in your entire life, outside of having your kids and getting married, what would you choose?
Boy, let's see. There's days in the week when I lay in my bed in my underwear and I switch channels and I don't have any, and I'm not worried about anything.
And they're the best.
Those are the best. Just lay there and I just go through my channels and I find something. And
I don't have to get up and go to Piers Morgan Uncensored. I can just
it,
lie
Go
here.
to sleep. Those are the best moments, you know.
And do you sing when you're on your own? You just suddenly let rip?
I do, you know, I do start singing, yeah, sometimes. Because I'm still, like I said, working on my voice. I'm trying to get to a thing, you know, that I'm working on.
I mean, if I was to goad you now, could you let rip or something?
Ooh, okay. What do you want to hear?
Try. I try.
Piers Morgan is the best.
But that's not Macy Gray. Come on.
That was great.
Give me a bit of I try. Come on.
That's what I'm working on.
Come on.
Okay. Oh, I try?
Yeah.
Well, I have a new record out, Piers, and it's way better.
Well, go on then. Give me a bit of the new one.
Oh, the new one? Okay, so the new one goes, so I have a song called Every Night, which you gotta hear. That should actually be the theme for
It's out now. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
for your new TV
From the
show.
new album, The Reset.
Congratulations. And then I have a song called Thinking of You. It goes,
Okay.
how's it go? It goes, wait. I'm drinking and I'm thinking of you. That's it.
And were you thinking of me when you sang that?
Totally. Absolutely.
Macy, it's great to see you. The new album, The Reset, is released on July 8th. The new single, Every Night, is out now.
And
You just
Thinking
finished
of
your UK tour, and you're on tour in America now.
Yes.
Well, best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you.
Appreciate it.
Well, trust in policing is in crisis on both sides of the Atlantic, so what do we do about it? On one side, a radical fringe wants to defund the police, tear down those broken institutions as they see it and start again. On the other, back the blues, spend, strengthen, support our cops, defend the police. I'm with those, but it's not always easy, not when you see videos like the one I'm about to show you. And warning, it is truly shocking. This is shocking security camera footage of the school massacre in Uvalde, Texas, where 2 teachers and 19 children were shot dead. And it shows craven, cowardly police cowering in the corridor for more than an hour as the children were slain inside their classroom.
Get in your room! Get in your room! Get in your room! Get in your room!
2 minutes later, Ramos strolls down the corridor. A child turns to run for his life as the killer opens fire. And just 3 minutes after that, armed police enter the building. But within 60 seconds, they retreat, even as the gunman continues to fire at the kids. Officers with ballistic shields, rifles and body armour then wait in the corridor for more than an hour as the massacre unfolds. One checks his phone. Another is seen sanitising his hands. And at one point, Sheriff's Deputy Felix Rubio has to be held back by his own colleagues in tears because his own 10-year-old daughter was inside. She died. Well, finally, at 12:50, 77 minutes after the gunman first entered the school, these armed officers eventually summoned up the guts to go into that classroom and kill him, but not before 19 children. That kind of policing is impossible to defend. So how do we fix this mess and restore confidence in the police? Well, Bill Bratton is the man to ask. He's a former police chief in both New York and Los Angeles, as well as an advisor to the Met Police here in London. He joins me now. Bill, great to see you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Good to be with you and your audience.
I wanted to start, if I may, with this shocking footage that's been leaked from the massacre in Uvalde. We don't normally see this kind of footage, and it's extremely harrowing. But perhaps the most disturbing part of it is the inaction of all these armed police. What did you make of it?
Well, it is almost impossible to explain the unexplainable. We are handicapped in some respects by looking at video that's been edited, unedited. We don't have the verbal aspect of it, the audio. But just what we are looking at makes you angry, extraordinarily angry, particularly as somebody who spent 50 years in the police profession. Can't explain it, certainly not going to try to justify it. There's going to have to be a lot of very thorough investigation of what went wrong there, because everything looked like it went wrong. No supervision, no coordination, no organization. And in some instances, maybe cowardice. In some instances, bravery that was first exhibited. The first officers that went down the hall were shot at, but then retreated. It went against everything we trained for in American policing. Since Columbine back in 1989, I think it was, we train our officers, 1 of you, 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, you go to the danger. That's the expectation. You take the oath of office and put that badge on. Most of these officers did not go toward the danger, and can't justify it.
Truly shocking. On a wider point, Bill, I think you're the only top policeman to have run the police in both New York and LA. So you've been in this game a very long time and dealt with all sorts of crime. You were famous for the broken window strategy, where you take care of the lesser crimes in an effort to try and stem the tide of the more serious crimes. And it was very successful. When you've looked at what's been going on with crime in America, but also in London, you came over here to try and advise the beleaguered Met Police. Are there parallels, and what should be done to restore trust in the police?
There are extraordinary parallels between British police services and American police forces. The issue of broken windows that, while I'm noted for my support of and implementation of that strategy dealing with so-called quality of life, victimless crime. There's a more famous individual, Sir Robert Peel, your first head of the Metropolitan Police, Prime Minister, in his very famous 9 principles of policing, which is the foundation I stand on. The first one is the basic mission for which the police exist is to prevent crime and disorder. In my country, in your country, in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, and unfortunately in some communities even today, the emphasis was strictly on responding to crime. It wasn't believed the police could prevent it. And the focus and prioritization was serious crime with an almost total neglect of the so-called broken windows or quality of life offenses of loitering, public drunkenness, graffiti, prostitution, the hooligans hanging on the corner all night long, keeping you awake. My rise in American policing was I recognized very early on that you need to focus on both serious crime and quality of life. And why quality of life? It's what people see every day. And it might be victimless in the sense you don't have a specific victim, but what is destroyed are neighborhoods. They deteriorate. What is destroyed is confidence in police and government that we care or that we can be effective. The turnaround of New York City began in the subways when we started focusing on the 5,000 homeless, or you call it sleeping rough, in our subways, the 250,000 people a day not paying the fare, the aggressive begging, the graffiti. By focusing on that, the ridership began to feel more secure. Based on that success, Rudy Giuliani hired me in 1994. Interestingly enough, I learned from the Metropolitan Police, the British Police Services. That's where I got Sir Robert Peel's 9 principles. Sir Robert Mark visited Boston in 1975 and met a very impressionable young sergeant named Bill Bratton. And I married those 9 principles. That is the foundation of your new Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Raleigh. He is really going to focus on policing by consent. The reason you call police services in your country versus police forces in my country is this idea that you're there to serve and service the community. And you try to do that with the minimum of force. In your country, I applaud, and I'm always amazed, being quite frank with you, that the majority of your officers still vote, when it comes to a vote, to not carry firearms because they feel that will reduce the confidence that the public has in them and the idea that they are a police service and not a force.
Is one of the problems for police, both in America and the UK, and indeed everywhere at the moment, that social media can very quickly amplify anything?
It's very significant, but I look at it from the perspective of plus and a minus. The minus is that incidents can be amplified and magnified in a very significant way. We saw that with George Floyd. Going back to Rodney King, back in the early 90s, the first time a videotaping was aired on American television before social media even occurred, and what that brought about in America. When I talk about the plus and the minus, the plus side of it is police can use social media to their benefit, which I certainly have done in Los Angeles, in New York, with the millions of followers who access our Twitter sites, our Facebook sites, the idea of us telling our story from our perspective, and sometimes with more facts than the media on social media might have.
Bill, I could talk to you for a lot longer. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. No one has better credentials about policing than you, as we've just heard. So thank you very much indeed for sparing the time.
All the best.
Uncensored next. Should you let your family have a say in your right to die? Bake Off star Dame Prue Leith thinks not.
Piers, we would only be having this conversation when I was within 6 months of dying. I don't believe that my son would make my last 6 months even more distressing by refusing me that.
This is Talk TV.
Well, Great British Bake Off star Dame Prue Leith is a passionate advocate for assisted dying, which at the moment remains illegal in Britain. Her son, the Conservative MP Danny Kruger, completely disagrees. He spoke out recently in Parliament against assisted dying in a debate which was held after a petition reached 100,000 signatures.
Over half the people in other countries where assisted dying is legal choose it because they feel they are a burden to their families. Tragically, a lot also say that they are lonely. Isn't this terrible? People getting the state to help to kill them because they don't want to be a burden on a family that never visits them. Talk to any hospice manager about relatives and they will quietly confirm it. There are a lot of people who want granny or grandpa to hurry up and die.
Well, I'm joined now by Prue Leith. Prue, lovely to talk to you.
Hello, Piers.
This is a very serious subject, and opinions have been raging on both sides about it. Why do you feel so passionately about this issue?
Well, I suppose it's because I'm 82 and heading for the big decision. But I started getting interested in the whole subject when my elder brother died, and he died a really horrible death. And recently my younger brother died, and he died at home with his family around him, and he didn't have assisted suicide because he didn't need it, but he had the sort of death that I think that people who want assisted suicide would dearly love to have, you know, at home, their own bed, surrounded by their family.
What is very interesting, Prue, is that in many states in America, including California and New Jersey, Washington, Vermont, in many of those states, assisted suicide is completely legal. It's legal in many parts of Australia. It's legal, I think, in Canada now. So there are lots of countries in the world where assisted suicide is now a legal practice.
And what's more, it's being, you know, it looks as if as if Jersey, Scotland will get there before us. I mean, it's only the UK government that has been so dilatory.
To play devil's advocate for a moment, there are reports out of Oregon, for example, where 53% of patients who were helped to die gave as a reason that they were a burden on family, friends and carers, rather than citing pain or fear of pain. Are you concerned about that part of it?
Yes, I think that, first of all, I think it's a legitimate reason. If you know that you are causing your family a lot of anxiety and anxiousness and worry about you, and you are either in huge pain or not enjoying your life, then it's a valid reason. I mean, I'm not saying for a minute that that people should want to commit suicide or have an assisted death just because they're a burden. But being a burden is one of the things that is so distressing.
I mean, see, this is where I think the slippery slope argument, which I think Gordon Brown and others have espoused, I do think there is a concern there, isn't there, where you're from a lovely family of well-intentioned people, I have no doubt. However, there are lots of families which perhaps are not quite so well-intentioned to their oldest and not so dearest, who, particularly if there's money perhaps lurking in wills and so on, would be tempted potentially to really make these people feel they are a massive burden and should shuffle off this mortal coil very sharpish.
I really think this is a bit of a bogeyman that doesn't, although it does exist, it is quite small.
One of your sons, he's a Tory MP who's actually vehemently opposed this legislation. So what are you going to do if you decide in a few years' time you've become a massive burden and he says, sorry, Mum, I'm not doing it?
Well, that's going to be a real problem because we are devoted to each other, and he has generally very principled objections. I think he's quite wrong. But I hope I'm hoping I'll manage to, first of all, I'm hoping that he will not manage to muster all his mates in Parliament to vote against it, and that I will manage to persuade him before I get there.
I mean, it's a fascinating situation where your own son is literally in the Houses of Parliament campaigning for the complete opposite.
Many families have disagreements about all sorts of things. We happen to have one about this. But I really think, I honestly believe that I should be in control of my own life. I mean, I think the idea that that somehow human life is so sacred. I mean, sacred to whom? It's not sacred to me, and it's my life I'm talking about.
No, but you see, OK, so here's again, though.
By all means, he can think his life is...
I get it, but here's the thing. If I talk to your son about this, I'm sure he'd say, well, that's fine. That might be her view, my mother's view, but actually I love my mother and I don't want to lose my mother and I want to get every moment I can out of her. And if she's not in searing agony, but is simply drifting towards the end of her life, I don't want her to be pulling the plug.
Piers, we would only be having this conversation when I was within 6 months of dying. I don't believe that my son would make my last 6 months even more distressing by refusing me that.
Yeah, but I think he would argue. I don't want to speak for him, but I think from the arguments he's put forward, he would probably argue to that point.
Sure, he would.
He would say that your decision would compound his distress. What about his right to not let you take your life?
No, I'm sorry. When it comes to my own life, it's my life. Tough. He's going to lose me within 6 months anyway. So, man up and bear us a few months earlier, or a few weeks earlier.
Bruley, it's a fascinating debate, not least your own situation with your own family. But unfortunately, you're looking in rude health, so we won't have to encounter this issue, I would imagine, for a very long time to come, thankfully. But thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
There are so many people who are not in rude health, and we need to think about them.
Yeah, we do. It's an interesting debate. And as you say, most of the public are with you, not your son.
Yeah.
Prue, great to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Well, Uncensored next. It's the big burning question of our time, isn't it? What is a woman? Well, who better to give us a straight scientific answer than the world's #1 fertility expert, Lord Robert Winston, who we've apparently dragged into the street to give the answer to this seminal question. We'll speak to him after the break. Welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Last week I asked the award-winning singer Macy Gray what a woman was, and she gave me a simple, honest answer, which sadly triggered an avalanche of online abuse. She was branded an ignorant bigot and a transphobe, and eventually went on the NBC Today show in America to backtrack. Well, now the Church of England is struggling with that question too, announcing it has no official definition of a woman, that additional care is needed when trying to answer it. All very weird. Well, Lord Robert Winston, the world-leading scientist in the field of fertility and reproduction, joins me now. Lord Winston, first of all, thank you for coming into the street. We've had some logistical issues, and we really appreciate you making the effort to still do the interview, so thank you. Can you answer for me this very simple question? What is a woman?
Of course, I can't answer the question anyway. A woman is a female, and the female is defined by the genes she has, essentially. She has 2 X chromosomes if she's human normally, and that would be the definitive. It's probably easier to define a male. A male has specific masculine genes, which make us different from women. And the female position is the default human position. That is to say, if there's no male genes there, you're born as a woman.
But, I mean, dictionaries just simply say a woman is an adult female and a man is an adult male. Why is the world finding it all so complicated now?
It is really quite extraordinary. Basically, we are a cluster. Standing here, I'm a clump of about 8 trillion cells, at least, each of which of those cells has got my maleness in it. I'm defined genetically. Every single cell has got those male genes. And that would apply to a woman who doesn't have those genes. So that's what makes the difference. And we cannot escape the fact that we are genetically determined in this way. Of course, they define in terms of our shape, for example, where they have breasts and all the rest of it. But essentially, that's what it amounts to.
So when we have... Well, obviously, it's a complicated debate about trans people, for example. And as I've regularly said, I completely support trans people's rights to fairness and equality. I just have an issue where you see women's rights get eroded in the stampede for trans rights. And I just don't think you can create a new unfairness and equality, for example, in sport and so on. Do you think that what we're doing as a society is conflating sex and gender, which is a point that J.K. Rowling and others have made strongly?
Yes, Piers, of course you're absolutely right, and there's no question that we can change our gender. We can do it by mutilating ourselves. We can remove bits of our body and therefore change our shape and so on. But you can't change your sex because that is embedded actually in those genes in every cell in the body. That's the difference. And that really becomes a problem because, of course, occasionally you end up with, let's say, somebody who is born a male but then wants to become a female, so you can have that mutilating operation, for example, but then the question is, should they be allowed to compete in sport? That's a major problem because, of course, they still will have certain male characteristics which will likely to give them an edge over other women. And so that is where the problem really, I think, lies. And, of course, also the issue of just social behaviour in different situations, using toilets, using bathrooms, a whole range of issues like this, which understandably worry women.
Well, I've got a woman here, Esther Krakow, and you're listening to Lord Winston. He's honestly one of the most eminent people in this field in the world. Yep. Are you satisfied with that definition of a woman?
I'm more than satisfied. It physically pains me that we have to even define what a woman is, because cavemen knew this, but apparently the most educated people in human history don't know it, so... You know, thank God he's here to save the day.
Lord Winston, I want to talk to you also about Elon Musk, who's a fascinating character. But he believes we have a huge population problem in the world, that actually we need more people, not fewer people. Do you agree with him?
Well, do you know, I think Elon Musk is a wonderful individual in what he does, but actually he's not a biologist. And let's just be very clear. I don't think it matters very much because the world's population will not depend on Elon Musk, it will not depend on politicians, it will depend on the environment. And of course, under the right circumstances, the population will certainly expand. If there is, as there likely to be, starvation in other parts of the world, it will decrease. What I think we are seeing, though, is that rich countries, the population is certainly diminishing, but in poorer countries it isn't because they don't have the ability to control their births, or they need more people to support them in old age, for example. And that, I think, is a fundamental issue. But the world could support a lot more people if, in fact, we had better provision for a whole range of things like food supplies and so on.
Are you happy that the political population of this country is about to have one less member in Boris Johnson?
Well, I don't understand the man, frankly. I mean, I think he's been unbelievable. It's really difficult to understand why he insists he wasn't going to resign, for example, then, of course, finally had to. It's very ignominious, and I don't think it's a great representation of our politics. It is so sad because there are so many really good politicians around, but we need people actually who have that sense of actually understanding what the limits are of what seems to be power. I think for some reason he almost became a sort of, he wanted in his mind a kind of dictator. This is an extraordinary thing for somebody who's a conservative, who actually should be conserving the political arena.
Yeah, I completely agree. Of any of the runners and riders left in the leadership race, do any of them excite you? Can you see yourself being happy with any of them as Prime Minister?
Well, you know, to tell you the truth, I think this whole election process, which the Conservative Party is going through, is a pretty rubbish contest. I mean, how you can choose just 2 people out of a pool of 20 or 30 and then put them in front of another electorate, which also is hand-picked by their membership of that party, doesn't actually make complete sense. It isn't, I think, the way a democracy should work. Perhaps this can't get sorted out until finally we have a proper general election, and then we might have some common sense back. But I think the real...
I'm sorry, Lord Wilson, we've run out of time. I could talk to you again a lot longer, and I would love to soon, if you don't mind. But I have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. No. Esther, thank you. Whatever you're up to, keep it uncensored. Good night.
Join me, Ian Collins, every day on Talk TV.
There is nothing we hate more than hypocrisy.
Discussing the big issues.
Why was it so hard to establish the deputy leader was at a meeting with her colleagues?
The callers.
Alan in Grimsby, Tracy in Burton-on-Trent. Dave, thank you very much.
Picking apart the big stuff.
This simply does not wash. Look who's back under the spotlight.
This is Talk TV News.
Good evening, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The 5 remaining Tory leadership candidates have gone head-to-head in the first TV debate of the contest to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss, Kemi Badenoch and Tom Tugendhat all answered questions from an audience of floating voters on the Channel 4 debate, including on why the public should trust them, their opinion on tax cuts and how they would make a clean break from Boris Johnson. And doctors are urging people to stay indoors in the coming days as the Met Office issues the highest ever warning for extreme heat in England. There's also a level 4 national emergency heat health alert on Monday and Tuesday, with temperatures potentially reaching up to 40 degrees Celsius in some places in the UK. That's all for now. We'll have more news updates after the talk.